Welcome to First Sleep Aid, calm stories to help you unwind, learn, and fall asleep. From true crime to curious facts and thoughtful ideas, always softly spoken. Subscribe now and take a deep breath. You're in good hands.
Tonight, we're diving deep into, well, a real, enduring enigma, the Zodiac Killer. It's a mystery that's really cast a long shadow, hasn't it? For decades now.
It certainly has. And I know you, our listener, you're often drawn to these uh, compelling, sometimes unsettling stories where history and, well, human darkness intersect.
Exactly. So this is going to be a really focused look at a case that, frankly, just keeps captivating people, keeps confounding investigators.
We'll try to navigate that whole intricate web,
Yeah.
from those first horrific
So
crimes.
the cryptic messages, the manhunt, and all the names that keep popping up as suspects even today.
Yeah, we've gathered quite a bit of material. We want to trace the chilling origins, look closely at those perplexing messages he left.
And the huge effort to identify them,
Yeah.
right? Plus the individuals who've become sort of central figures in this whole puzzle over the years.
Our goal here is really to give you a comprehensive understanding. We want to move past just the sensational stuff and really examine the core details and, the profound impact of this whole unsolved chapter.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. Before Zodiac was even a name, before it meant fear, let's picture Vallejo, California, late 1960s.
Seemingly pretty quiet, right? A suburban kind of place.
Until December 1968. That piece was just shattered.
Utterly. The first victims, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, teenagers. First date, I believe.
Just awful. And the location was Lake Herman Road, known sort of Lover's Lane type spot.
Exactly. And the details are just stark. It was sudden, incredibly violent. David shot once in the head, still in the car. Betty Lou tried to run.
But she didn't get far.
No, gunned down pretty quickly. And the thing that was so terrifying right from the start was the lack of any clear motive.
Right, it wasn't robbery, no big struggle.
Nothing like that. It just looked like a swift, merciless execution, that randomness. It immediately set this pattern of unpredictable violence. That became his signature, really.
And then, just a few months later, July 4th, 1969, Independence Day. Another attack, Blue Rock Springs Park, also in Vallejo, not far from the first one.
Yeah, the targets this time were Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau sitting in their car.
The circumstances were a bit different here, weren't they?
A little, yeah, but just as chilling. A car pulled up alongside them, drove off, then came back.
Came back.
And just opened fire, a barrage of shots. Mageau amazingly survived, though he was badly wounded. His account is, well, crucial.
Absolutely. But what really shifted things, what signaled this was something different, was the phone call, right?
The phone call, yes. Made to the Vallejo Police Department just, maybe 40 minutes after the Blue Rock Springs attack?
Chilling. What did he say?
Well, get this. The caller claimed responsibility, not just for Blue Rock Springs, but for Lake Herman Road, too. Linked them together explicitly.
Wow. So he's taking ownership straight away.
And he even identified the weapon used in the second attack, a 9mm Luger. It was just incredibly brazen.
That call.
Yeah.
It just sends a shiver down your spine, even thinking about it now. Why do you think he did that, make the call so soon?
Well, it suggests a real need to announce himself, doesn't it? To take ownership. It wasn't just about the violence itself anymore.
There was this desire for recognition.
Exactly. To connect the dots for everyone. He was starting to build his narrative, even before he had the name. This was the start of a new kind of terror, where the killer didn't just want to harm, he wanted to communicate, to claim authorship.
And communicate. He certainly did. Less than a month later, August 69, 3 Bay Area newspapers, the Chronicle, the Examiner, the Vallejo Times-Herald, they each get a letter, almost identical, handwritten.
A major escalation, no doubt. And these weren't just, rambling confessions, they were a challenge.
The cipher.
The 408 character cryptogram,
Yeah.
divided into 3 parts, 1 part sent to each paper, and he demanded they publish it on their front pages,
What else?
or else he'd go on another kill rampage. That was his threat. Indiscriminate killings. It created this just unprecedented wave of public fear.
And the symbol was there too, right? The circle with the cross.
Yes, on each letter, his future calling card.
The public reaction must have been intense. Fear, obviously, but also this kind of morbid curiosity.
Oh, absolutely. And remarkably, within about a week, that first cipher was cracked.
By a couple, right?
Teachers. Donald and Betty Harden, yeah. A school teacher and his wife from Salinas. They figured it out.
And the message itself? What did it reveal?
Well, it was deeply, deeply disturbing. Gave this chilling glimpse into, well, a profoundly warped mind.
What kinds of things did he say?
He wrote about how much he enjoyed killing, said it was the most thrilling experience, even better than, sex. Compared people to animals being hunted.
Just completely detached from humanity.
Utterly. And the stated motive was maybe the most bizarre part. He believed that when he died, he'd be reborn in paradise.
And his victims.
Would become his slaves in the afterlife. That's why he was collecting them.
Unbelievable. A total lack of empathy. Just this massive, distorted ego.
Precisely. And crucially, he refused to give his name in the cipher. Said it would slow down or stop my collecting of slaves for my afterlife.
So even then, the anonymity was key for him.
It seems so. But then, just a day before the Hardens solved that cipher, another letter arrived. This one went to the San Francisco Examiner. Shorter, but incredibly significant.
This is the one.
This is the one. It started with those 5 words. This is the Zodiac speaking.
And just like that, he had his name, his brand.
Exactly. He wasn't just some anonymous killer anymore. He was an entity. It was a calculated move, you know? He understood the power of a name, of a persona. It signaled he was going to keep playing this game with the public, with the media.
It wasn't just about the killing anymore. It was performance.
Absolutely. The performance was becoming central. And the narrative didn't stop there, of course. More cryptic stuff followed.
Like the next big cipher, the really difficult one.
Ah, yes. The Z340 arrived in November 1969. 340 characters this time. And this one was a whole different level of complexity.
It stumped everyone for ages, didn't it?
For decades. Over 50 years, in fact. It became this legendary puzzle for codebreakers all over the world. It wasn't a simple substitution like the first one. Its structure just seemed to defy all the usual patterns and techniques.
That must have just added to his whole mystique, right? This image of some kind of super intelligent mastermind.
Definitely. It's very difficult to amplify that image of this elusive, almost untouchable adversary.
Until, incredibly, December 2020. A team of amateur codebreakers actually cracked it.
Yeah, amazing effort by David Orenchak, Sam Black, and Jarl Van Eyck. A huge breakthrough after all that time.
But the message itself, maybe not the smoking gun everyone hoped for.
Well, it was interesting, but not revealing in the way people expected. No name, no confession in that sense. It mostly continued the taunting.
What sort of things did it say?
He mentioned he wasn't the guy who appeared on some TV show claiming to be him. He doubled down on his belief about paradise waiting for him.
Still talking about the afterlife.
Yep. Said he wasn't afraid of the gas chamber because it would just send him to paradise. He misspelled it all the sooner.
So, still obsessed with death. Still no concrete clues to who he was. More psychological breadcrumbs, really.
Exactly. More insight into his warped thinking, but not his identity.
And besides those big ciphers, he sent other weird stuff too, didn't he? Halloween cards, maps.
Yeah. All sorts of perplexing things. Halloween cards with strange messages, drawings, maps marked with symbols and coordinates, even instructions for a bomb, supposedly. And there was a cipher wheel mentioned in one letter.
It makes you wonder, was all that complexity, all those potential clues genuine? Or was it just misdirection?
That's a million-dollar question, isn't it? Many investigators and analysts lean towards misdirection, psychological games.
Like the cipher wheel that seemed to promise so much but led nowhere.
Exactly. Were these things designed to be solved or just to keep everyone guessing, running in circles, to make him seem more complex, more intelligent than maybe he was?
So the complexity itself might have been the point. A way to guarantee he'd never be caught, never be truly figured out.
That's a very strong theory. Create this dense smoke screen of clues and codes, this aura of intellectual superiority, maybe to hide a more, well, mundane reality behind the mask.
And every unsolvable piece just cemented his control, amplified the fear.
And you can't forget the media's role in all this. Every new letter, every cryptic clue splashed across the headlines. Inadvertently, maybe, but they were feeding the very attention he seemed to crave.
Which naturally led to this massive manhunt. Huge pressure on the police.
Immense pressure, and complicated too. The crimes and letters spanned different counties, different jurisdictions. Coordinating that, it was tough.
How many people did they actually look at?
The numbers are staggering. Over the course of the main investigation, they examined something like 2,500 individuals. Gives you a sense of the sheer scale of the effort.
And out of all those thousands, one name just keeps coming back again and again. The prime suspect, Arthur Lee Allen.
Allen, yes. He's the closest the official investigation ever really came to a solid suspect, even though he was never charged.
The circumstantial evidence against him seems almost overwhelming, doesn't it?
It's certainly compelling. I mean, look at the points. He lived in Vallejo, right near the early crime scenes.
Okay.
He owned a Zodiac brand wristwatch. Same name, same symbol the killer used. That's quite a coincidence.
It is. And didn't he say some disturbing things?
He did. Apparently told a friend years before the killing started that he had fantasies about hunting people, sending taunting letters to the police, using code, and even mentioned calling himself Zodiac.
Wow. Before the killer even used the name.
According to the friend, yes. And then there was the search of his trailer later on. Found weapons, bloody knives, dissected animals, disturbing writings.
So a lot pointing his way. But it wasn't enough. He was never charged. Why not?
That's the frustrating part, isn't it? Despite all that circumstantial smoke, they couldn't find the forensic fire, so to speak.
What specifically was missing?
Key things. Handwriting was a big one. Multiple experts looked at Allen's writing compared to the Zodiac letters, and the consensus was no match. Some were very definite it wasn't him.
Okay, handwriting's tricky, but what else?
Fingerprints. Prints were lifted from some crime scenes, from some letters. None matched Arthur Lee Allen.
Right, and DNA later on.
Exactly. Years later, they managed to get partial DNA profiles from saliva on stamps and envelope flaps from some Zodiac letters. Allen was excluded, didn't match.
So, despite looking like the perfect fit on paper in some ways.
The physical evidence just wasn't there to tie him definitively to the crimes. So suspicion lingered, especially for some investigators who were convinced it was him, but without that concrete proof, charges couldn't be laid. He died in 1992, still under a cloud of suspicion, but never formally accused.
It really shows how circumstantial evidence, however strong it seems, needs that forensic link, doesn't it?
It's a classic example. Compelling narrative, but no conclusive proof. And so the search, the speculation, it continued and continues, really.
Which brings us to some of the newer theories that have popped up, often after the potential suspect has already passed away. Let's talk about Gary Francis' Post. This theory emerged relatively recently, 2021.
That's right. Proposed by a group called the Case Breakers, made up of former law enforcement, journalists, intelligence officers, that sort of thing.
And what was their case based on?
A collection of, again, largely circumstantial points. They highlighted photos supposedly showing scars on Post's forehead that they claimed matched witness descriptions of the Zodiac.
Okay, physical resemblance.
They also alleged he ran some sort of criminal posse, exerted control over people. They pointed to some potential forensic clues, boot prints, paint flecks, though the links were debated.
And wasn't there something about anagrams?
Yes, that was a big part of their claim. They argued that if you rearranged the letters in the Zodiac's ciphers in certain ways, you could spell out Gary Francis Post's full name.
Anagrams, that feels a bit tenuous.
Yeah.
Has that been independently verified?
Well, it's certainly complex and open to interpretation. Linguistic experts outside the group haven't widely validated it as definitive proof. It relies on specific assumptions about how the anagrams were constructed.
And what did official law enforcement say about the Post theory?
They were pretty skeptical, publicly anyway. The FBI stated the case remained open, unsolved, and they didn't confirm any definitive link to Post. The local police departments involved didn't endorse the theory either.
So, lots of media buzz, but not a breakthrough in the eyes of the official investigation.
Pretty much. Interesting points raised, but not the conclusive evidence needed to close the book.
Okay, another name that sometimes comes up is Richard Gaikowski, a journalist.
Yeah, Richard Gaikowski. He worked for a counterculture newspaper in San Francisco, The Good Times, back in the late 60s.
What put him on the radar?
Several things. His job gave him access to printing equipment, typewriters, things potentially useful for creating the Zodiac letters. Some people thought his writing style had similarities to the Zodiac's.
Anything else?
There were claims his paper used the word Zodiac in some context before the killer did, though that's debated. And Michael Mageau, the Blue Rock Springs survivor decades later, was shown a photo lineup. He reportedly had a strong, sort of uncomfortable reaction to Gaikowski's photo, but didn't make a positive ID. Said something like, "That's him," but then seemed unsure. Plus, Gaikowski apparently worked near or had access to the Chronicle building where letters were sent.
Again, intriguing connections, but
no smoking gun, no forensic evidence linking Gaikowski. He was never seriously pursued by law enforcement as far as we know, and he died back in 2004. Still just a theory.
And then there's Lawrence Kane. His story brings in a different element, a brain injury.
Right, Lawrence Kane, sometimes known as Larry Kane. The focus here is often on a serious car accident he had in 1962 that resulted in a significant brain injury.
And the idea is this changed him.
Reports suggest it did. People who knew him said his personality changed, he lost impulse control, had behavioral issues afterwards.
And the Zodiac connection.
Well, he lived in the Bay Area during the killings. He had connections to Lake Tahoe around the time Donna Lass, a nurse suspected by some to be a Zodiac victim, disappeared from there. A former colleague of Lass even claimed Kane had been stalking her.
Okay. Any physical resemblance?
Yes, apparently he bore a resemblance to the composite sketch of the Zodiac, particularly the one from the Stein murder. He also had a criminal record involving things like voyeurism.
Any other odd details?
People described him as having unsettling traits, fascination with codes, ability to mimic voices. There's also an unconfirmed story that Kathleen Johns, who claimed to have been abducted by the Zodiac, possibly identified Kane in a photo lineup years later, but again, unconfirmed.
Handwriting.
One analyst felt there were some similarities between Kane's writing and the Zodiac's, but like with Allen, it wasn't conclusive enough. So Kane died in 2010, never officially named a suspect. Another potential piece, but not the whole puzzle.
It's just striking how you have these different individuals, Allen, Post, Gaikowski, Kane, each with these compelling, yet ultimately incomplete sets of circumstances pointing towards them. It really highlights why this remains such an enduring mystery.
Absolutely. No definitive answer.
So we've walked through the timeline, the terror, the suspects. But the Zodiac case, it didn't just fade away when the letter stopped, did it? It seeped into our culture.
Oh, completely. The Zodiac Killer became more than just a criminal. He became this cultural archetype, a symbol.
How did that happen? Media obviously played a role.
Hugely. Books, documentaries, countless articles, and David Fincher's movie, Zodiac, from 2007, that had a massive impact. It really shaped how a whole new generation perceived the case, the investigation, the obsession.
When he pops up in fiction too, right? Influencing other killer characters.
Definitely. He embodies that archetype of the cryptic, taunting, seemingly intelligent serial killer who plays games with the police and the public.
And the obsession continues online, doesn't it? People are still actively trying to solve it.
Oh, absolutely. Online forums, social media groups. They are teeming with amateur sleuths, dissecting every clue, debating every theory, proposing new suspects. The case has this incredible staying power in the digital age.
Why do you think that is? Is it purely the unsolved nature?
That's a huge part of it, yes. He represents that ultimate unknowable predator, the puzzle that defies a final solution. It taps into that deep human need for answers, for closure, and the frustration when we don't get it.
Psychologically, he embodies that fear of the unknown, maybe. Unlike killers where we eventually understand the why, his motive seems so opaque.
Exactly. The FBI developed a profile, of course, white male, 25-45 range probably, intelligent but maybe lacking higher education, interested in codes, definitely needing control, narcissistic, sociopathic, all the traits you might expect.
But the profile, while maybe accurate, didn't catch him.
No. It offered insights into the type of person he might be, but not who he was. It suggested he wasn't driven by typical motives like lust or money, but maybe by this deep psychological void he tried to fill by creating fear and mystery.
And the media, we touched on it, but they weren't just reporters, were they? They became part of the story itself.
Absolutely. From day one, by publishing his letters and ciphers, they became his platform. Then, as the official investigation stalled over the years, some media outlets or journalists started pushing their own theories. Was he a disgruntled journalist himself? Was it all some kind of publicity stunt gone wrong?
And the internet just poured gasoline on that fire.
Completely magnified it. The case became participatory. Everyone could access the letters, the ciphers, the police reports online. Everyone could become an investigator, which is fascinating, but also leads to, a lot of noise and sometimes distortion.
So the Zodiac evolved from a man committing horrific acts
To a symbol embodying that fear of the unseen predator, the intelligent monster hiding in plain sight. His iconography, that simple circle and cross, the descriptions of the hooded costume, it's instantly recognizable.
He functions almost like a character in our collective nightmares. A warning, a challenge.
A test, yeah. He became the prototype for a certain kind of modern anti-hero, in some ways enigmatic, seemingly brilliant, defying simple understanding.
And this unsolved nature, it fuels this ongoing obsession. You hear people talk about the Zodiac effect.
That's a good term for it. The mystery itself creates this powerful pull. People dedicate years, huge amounts of energy trying to crack it. These online communities are incredibly active.
It's like the internet gave the case a second life. Or maybe eternal life.
Algorithmically immortal, you could say. It keeps resurfacing, keeps engaging new people. The pursuit itself becomes this fascinating study of how we, as a society, grapple with the unknown, with unanswered questions in this information age.
But beneath the puzzle, the theories, the cultural fascination, there's still the real lingering impact of fear, isn't there?
Absolutely, you can't forget that. For the communities affected, for people who lived through that time in the Bay Area, there's a real memory of terror. And even for people learning about it now, it's deeply unsettling.
And for the investigators,
Yeah.
the families.
It left a lasting mark on law enforcement. Many investigators carried the frustration of this case for their entire careers. And for the families of David Faraday, Betty Lou Jensen, Darlene Ferrin, Paul Stein, Cecilia Shepard, the pain is unimaginable. They still don't have definitive answers. That lack of justice is profound.
And sadly, his methods, his persona, it influenced others.
Unfortunately, yes. There have been criminals who seem to mimic or be inspired by the Zodiac's taunting letters, his desire for media attention. A dark legacy in that sense, too.
So what we're left with, fundamentally, is this profound unsolved mystery. It has this magnetic pull, but it's also corrosive, isn't it? Denying that resolution.
It's the paradox of the great unsolved cases. They fascinate us, draw us in, but they also leave this void. They deny justice, leave families in limbo. And with the Zodiac, that lack of a confirmed identity, the lack of a neat narrative ending that's central to his enduring power, his grip on our imagination.
In the center of it all, there's no real justice, is there? Just echoes.
Echoes of the crimes, echoes of the fear, echoes of the questions. That's well put.
So the Zodiac Killer. From those terrifying first attacks back in the late 60s, he really has transformed into this permanent fixture in the landscape of unsolved crime, a chilling monument to the power of the unknown.
He really has. The lack of a definitive answer, a face to the name, has allowed him to transcend the specific crimes and become this enduring cultural phenomenon, this dark legend.
And maybe, when you really think about it, maybe the Zodiac's ultimate twisted success wasn't just the violence he committed. Maybe it lies more in the silence he left behind. The decades of unanswered questions that still haunt us.
It's a provocative thought.
Perhaps his greatest power in the end is simply remaining unnamed, unknown. A chilling reminder that sometimes the most potent force, the thing that scares us the most, is what we can't see, what we can't define.